Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being your show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Dealing with Mikadono Sisters is a Breeze, Season 1, Episode 6. Another great episode. Cute, adorable. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up where last episode left off where Kazuki was like, yo, you and me, we're going on a date. And like I pretty much figured, Nico and Miwa are overhearing this, but they end up going back into their rooms before they hear the full conversation that Kazuki's like, oh, I'm trying out for this role, so I want to go out on a date, but don't take it too seriously. But Yu's like, no, I will. I'll make it the perfect date because I'll help you as much as I possibly can for the purposes of preparing you for this role. And so what ultimately ends up happening is Miwa and Nico, first and foremost, they try to poke at, like, it was specifically Nico first and foremost. I think it's interesting because it feels like out of the trio, she seems to be the one that kind of like started potentially developing feelings for him first. I mean, they're all kind of like feeling a certain way about you, but it feels like it really started with Nico to some extent. So it's interesting that she's the one that questioned him at first and being like, "Oh, so you doing anything?" He's like, "Nope, help you guys out like I normally do." And she's like, "Oh my God, he lied to my face." So the fact of the matter is, he felt the need to lie to my face must mean like something seriously is going on. And even Miwa's feeling like pacing back and forth because she heard about like the awesome date and everything. Because she's like, I can't even imagine what that is. And now she's kind of like, oh my God. So they're both stalking Kazuki and Yu on their date, which I even love. They bought each other disguises, and they were like, "Oh, I thought that this would make the other look weird," but they ended up picking out outfits that actually make the other like really look cute. Which I was like, "Oh, that's super adorable and funny." But Kazuki, I think it probably works to her benefit. I don't think that was the intention. Wearing the wig was meant to like really put her into character, but I think it also does help because it hides your identity because no one's going to immediately recognize you as Kazuki. So as a Mikadono, so it's like that. I think it's an unintentional benefit. I mean, maybe that thought process. I don't think they ever went into like that being part of the thought process, but maybe I missed that. Either way. Yu's got it all planned out about what their date's going to be. I think it's so cute. Like, first and foremost, when they're going down the stairs, she's leading initially. He's like, whoa, we got this wrong. So he's like, I'll lead. They go to the aquarium. They get splashed by water. She defends him, and everyone's like, yo, your girlfriend's so awesome. Like, oh, look at you two being so cute. It's like, oh, well, things kind of got mixed matched. Again, like, you supposed to be. But I figured as much just because that's just instinctually Kazuki. Kazuki's always just kind of played that role. So it's like, that's just who she is by default. That ends up being an interesting conversation. And it becomes that, is Kazuki like that because that is purely her nature? Or is that more so, and it's something she kind of talks about later on, or is it more so about the role that people fit her in? So we'll get to that later on, but every little step of the date, they couldn't decide who holds the shopping bag. They ordered like drinks at like a cafe. Like one was like almost like this parfait-esque drink. Another one's I think just a tea or coffee or whatever. But they got the wrong orders. It just like everything. She ended up having to like stop because like with the whole kimono situation at the festival, she's not used to wearing those type of shoes. So it's almost like she has to like stop for a second. So every step of their date's kind of been a little, I don't know whether Miwa and Nico realized that it almost felt like they were, I don't know, giddy would be the right word. It almost seemed like they were kind of like more okay with the fact that the date went sideways. In fact, they almost seemed like they preferred it that way. Once again, I could be reading way too much into that, but it felt like they were like, oh, this date is cratering. But maybe it was more so from the perspective of, oh my God, I can't believe this went so horrendous. But it almost, like I said, I think on some deeper level, they might have been kind of hoping that it would. But either way, she initially gets stopped by a guy being like, hey, yo, like, you should be a model and stuff like that. He's like part of, like, he's a talent agent, a scouter and stuff like that. So it's ironic. But, like, Kazuki doesn't want to be found out. So she's like, oh, no. And, hey, this guy is, like, persistent, which is like, hey, the lady said no. She said no. But he's persistent because he's like, yo, you're so, I mean, I'm sure it benefits him because it's like, if I'm the one that scouts you, that looks better on my career. I'm the one that ended up discovering the next big star and stuff. It makes sense. But, he wasn't willing to let go, and it took you stepping up, being like, "Hey, she has no interest. She's got her own plans." And the guy asked follow-ups. What are those future plans? He's like, I wasn't expecting you that. He was like, oh, she's going to be a performer. He's like, oh, great. He's like, no, I mean a reformer. She's going to be part of government. It's like, well, that's a waste. He's like, I know you're trying to dupe me, dude. And just use like, I'm going to marry her. But all that guy could see is like, you look like a toddler to me, especially in comparison to Kazuki, because she's very, very tall. But it's just, you just look like a toddler, like a little kid brother trying to protect his sister, which I even love that he starts getting nervous about that because they're like, oh, look at those two cute siblings. He's like, siblings, I know, I got to lean into this and make us look more like a couple. I mean, eventually the guy kind of was like, all right, fine, whatever, and just scoots along. I'm curious, will they run into that guy again? Probably not, but you never know. It'd be interesting if Kazuki runs into him when she's just like, when she's not, obviously, like, when she's just herself and runs into him and kind of gets a little embarrassed or something. He kind of goes, hey, you look kind of familiar. It'd be something funny like that. Or maybe he runs into you again, or maybe you and Kazuki, but Kazuki looks like she normally does. She's not wearing a wig. There's some funny stuff that could happen in that capacity. But obviously, like, when he made his proposal, everyone else nearby is like, oh my God, did he propose to her? Oh my God, that's so adorable. But yeah. The next stop on their date is a movie, because at this point Kazuki's already feeling like a little bit of a, she's like, oh, like nothing in our date's going well, because she's like, I know you had put so much effort into this and to try to make this awesome for my sake. So she's like, oh, he must be disappointed with me. If anything, he's disappointed in himself because he feels like, no, I'm failing you. At no point did he date like Kazuki was a failure. He was like, no, I'm the one that's the failure. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, so like he's one of those types who would internalize a lot of that. So he feels like it's on him rather than Kazuki. Because it was like, yeah, this is his plan, and it not going well, it's like he'll put that on himself. But he takes her to a movie. He purposely took her to a movie because he found out, like, oh, not only is a romance movie playing. I had to look this up because I think the movie's called Love in April, and I was like, isn't there a manga and an anime based on that? It's like, no, Your Lie in April. It is still like a romantic, I think, comedy or romantic comedy or drama or whatever. But I was almost wondering first, I'm like, that's not correlate or anything like that, but I was wondering, I was like, it's not the same mangaka who writes who does Dealing with Mikadono Sisters as a Breeze, but it's like, no, completely separate mangaka. Because I think he did specifically choose this movie because it was one of the people from her troupe who did the movie. This is like their first like big lead in a movie. And, you know, they were the whole class was proud once this member was leaving. And so you was hoping that this would give inspiration to Kazuki, because she's actually avoided watching this movie because she was nervous to see how her senpai would do. And now when she's watching it, she can tell it wasn't like the greatest, because it's like, right, you did so great in all these other performances, like, but specifically it was men roles. And now it's like Kazuki is like getting very like self-conscious, because she's like, that's the thing, like, if you can't do it, what hope is it for someone like me? Because she sees so much of herself in her senpai, because like we are kind of cut of the same cloth, we play like similar roles, and it's like you can see that translated in how she played the role. And even some of the audience is like, oh, that was dull, like she fell flat in that role and stuff like that. Like, isn't she supposed to be like some like very talented actress? And it just bummed Kazuki out, and you realizes that too, because he's like, I'm so stupid, I didn't even think about like, what if that, like, I thought this would inspire her, in fact it kind of like dashed her spirits. So they have one last stop on the date, and it's a Ferris ride, which seems so cliche, but this has the story of, oh, well, if you basically announce like, go to the top of the Ferris wheel with whoever you're with, you basically, it becomes like official. It's kind of like a superstition, which you was completely unaware of. This is Kazuki, Miwa, and Nico all hearing it for the first time. Like, yo, is he about to do this? And she's stressing about it a little bit, freaking out, because throughout the date, she's had little moments where he's squeezing her hand, like, right, he's trying his hardest, I'm gonna try my hardest, and even to the point they're interlocking fingers while they're walking, really leaning into it. And obviously all she can think about is, you know, her past, how she got to where she is. And we get a lot of like, I mean, each one of the sisters have internalized essentially the pressure their father put on them. And he's like the leading charge in it. Like I said, I don't know if because there's hints to some stuff last episode about Miwa and Nico. Well, because Nico has a senpai that she wants to like impress, and it's like, oh, I think that person probably inspired her a lot. There's something up with Miwa that there were hints to last episode as well, so I think we'll eventually get onto that. But Kazuki's particular issue is, right, she's always been like very tall for her age, even when she was younger. She always preferred keeping her hair short, wearing shorts over skirts. And so it's always she's always had that image in people's eyes. So when she started performing initially, it was simply like out of love, but then it became a situation of, that's what I have to do. The pressures put on by her father of his expectations of, you have to be a prodigy, you have to do this, you can't fail, you got to like open your repertoire of, you can't just be isolated to just playing men role, you have to be able to play women role as well, you have to excel at everything. That's what it means to be a prodigy. That's what it means to be a Mikadono. Like I said, I don't know what that stems from. Like I said, him trying to perfect his daughter so they'll always have a place in the world. Whether it's him putting his own like issues onto them because like maybe losing their mom like made him fully dedicated to work, and he's pushing that onto his kids as well, trying to like in his own warped way, he's trying to do what is best for his kids, but he's kind of like, the lines have blurred so much, he's kind of lost his way so much. But it isn't just her father. Kazuki feels the pressure from so many people that look up to her, being like, oh my god, like I know that the next performance you make is going to make whatever you're doing so amazing, so great. And so she feels like, I can't fail, because if I do, I'm going to let someone down. Like, failures don't get a second shot. And it's like, she's like, failures don't get to play heroine's role. So she's like, I should just bail out of this, because I'd rather drop out than fail, because she's so scared of failing. And like, her father doesn't realize the pressure and so many people don't realize how heavy that burden has been for them, and how suffocating that can be. But then we find out who has a fear of heights. He's like, I normally go with heights, but it's specifically the whole clear bottom of the Ferris wheel that kind of makes him, like, the carts of the Ferris wheel make him super nervous. And Kazuki can't help but notice, like, right, this kid is a constant failure. He's failing, like, him trying to defend me from that scout. It was him failing over and over again miserably. But, she brings up the fact is that, but he steps up to her. He's like, the fact is that, he's like, I forgot what the exact wording was. It was basically like, I want you to be like the best heroine ever. And he's like, flubs the last word. He was so close, but he messed up the last word. She's like, just sit down before you like keep shaking the car. He's like, yes, ma'am. And sits down. But for her, it's like, it's actually reassuring, because she recognizes and knows he's not perfect. He isn't a prodigy. He fails at everything, but despite that, he still keeps trying. And she's like, oh yeah, like a failure like you and stuff like that. He's like, well, I've been a failure my entire life. She's like, wow, you're tough. So his title as a failure has become not only his biggest shame, but it's also become his armor, because it's like, well, if I'm seen as a failure, like nothing can, like, why should failing like hurt me? And there are certain freedoms in that Kazuki is like so worried about, so it kind of showcases like, yeah, it being called a failure all the time like really cuts deep, but it is also, like I said, it's acted as an armor, because it's like, well, if I'm already a failure, then what do I have to be afraid of failing for? I just have to get back up and try again. And so basically you were saying that someone, like, because he ends up showing her these photos, like the little moments during their mishaps throughout their dates, but these cute moments where it's just like, a lot of times she ends up trying so hard to fit the expressions of what she's supposed to be. And he showed her these moments where it's just like her expressions just naturally came out, and they were very cute and adorable expressions. And it's like, you can make these expressions in your face, but it's like you're putting too much pressure on yourself. And she even acknowledges like, wait, I've tried so hard to be what people wanted me to be, but it's like, I'm going to just be me going forward. I'm just going to like trust in myself, and that even if I do fail, and yes, some people may leave because of that, but I'm still going to embrace myself and try. And I've seen that this is what I'm capable of when I'm not putting so much pressure on myself to do this and do that. So her takeaway from this whole thing, like, this experience helped her grow. And there's even a moment between Miwa and Nico, because Miwa's initially like, oh, like, well, it looks like, Kazuki's like luckily still the same, like goes back to just being normal after this date, but Nico's like, no, she's definitely changed. We don't know what went up while they were on that Ferris wheel, but it's like she's definitely different. Even me was like, right, so it wasn't just me, you noticed that too. And Kazuki ends up whispering to you, getting very close to him and telling him like that kiss was my first kiss, so there's no way I'm gonna be able to just like forget about it and pretend like it meant nothing. Because he was telling her to do the same thing about the whole like proposal. She's like, obviously I'm not going to be able to forget that. Obviously I know what you were trying to do, but still like, it hits a certain way. So, but her takeaway is like, right, go back home, our date is over, and she takes off the wig, but it's like, yeah, there's a different energy and air about her, so that when you does get home to prepare food for everybody, they're like, so what were you up to? He's like, nothing. But they call him you, just like he was saying, like he was hoping that Kazuki going forward would continue to call him you like she did throughout the day. She never said no either. So, and now Nico and Miwa are doing it as well, and they're just kind of like a little annoyed because they're, from their perspective, well, the moment that he hears that he goes, oh my God, say it again. He's like, oh my God, I actually feel like I'm part of the family. But for both of them, like they're internalizing, like, you're supposed to be my supporter too. Don't like just give all that attention to Kazuki. So that's really adorable. Obviously, like looking at the ending now, we do see even more context of what went down in this episode is still, instilled from that. Like her fears of failure, as well as like the long hair, being in a dress and hanging out with you, and just like her waking up in the bed, like him like resting beside her, like looking after her, taking care of her, like he did like in episode 2, I believe, when she was sick, like showcasing all of that. It's kind of represented in the ending, and I'm sure like going back we'll see that very true through like the Nico and Miwa endings as well. But yeah, I'm very, very excited. Looking forward to seeing what the next episode has in store for us. Who's next up? Will it be Nico, Miwa? Probably, I'd assume Nico, then Miwa, but we'll see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.